For the artists, for the passionate. Welcome to the Adventures Elsewhere podcast. Hello everyone and welcome back to the Adventures Elsewhere podcast, or welcome if it's your first time. I am your host, Jade Black, and today I'm talking about what a thriller is, what the point is, what people look for in it, and why thrillers aren't harmless. And this particular episode was inspired by a tweet I saw last week. Some of you might immediately be questioning why I have the name and handle of the person who made this tweet on screen, because I have a screenshot of the tweet. And I say this is holding people accountable for their actions. This is putting out terrible writing advice that is harmful to newbie writers who don't know what they're doing. It's also someone who doesn't know really what a thriller is, what the point of it is, but also doesn't know what they're doing and is trying to be a Twitter expert. Let me read this tweet out for you. An example of what to do. Thriller novels are all tropes and the only thing that makes them unique are the characters. That's how it opens. It gets worse. Why does this work? It's spicy enough, debatable, but ultimately harmless. Excuse me? So let's take the key points of this. When you write a thriller, all you do is string tropes together. The only thing that makes a thriller unique are characters. Thrillers are ultimately harmless. That is what is being said here. And in saying this is harmless, you're also saying that tropes are harmless, that there's no such thing as a trope that is harmful. At best, you do not know anything about tropes, or you have a very limited knowledge of what tropes exist if you really think this. Let's talk about some tropes that you see very commonly in a lot of fiction, but also thriller. I'm going to start with one of the most popular and well-known tropes there is. Enemies to lovers. You see this everywhere, and I would argue more often than not this is actually really toxic and glamorizes abuse and all sorts of shit. I mean, if you take one look at dark romance, oh boy, you get into some very, very questionable material, at best, very quickly, and it's all enemies to lovers. You cannot tell me that this trope is harmless. And another one that comes up a lot, cheating. Some people might argue this isn't a specific trope, but you see it often enough and people use it often enough that, yeah. And again, cheating and enemies to lovers and all of this, well, where does all this stem from? Does it stem from, okay, I'm being abused by my partner, so I'm going to, cheat and then escape and whatnot? And even within, the cheating and all that, and the transition from enemies to lovers, well, consent in this is often dubious. It's not uncommon for consent to be dubious, and if that is not... You can't tell me that is harmless when there's dubious consent involved. That it's dubious and questionable, that's in the name. And betrayal is another one that comes up a lot in most fiction, honestly, but particularly in thriller. And in thriller in particular, when it comes to betrayal, this usually involves in somebody getting killed. A betrayal that results in at least one person, usually more, dying, isn't gonna be in any way harmful. You're telling me that is harmless. Okay. That's an interesting viewpoint. A common protagonist related trope that you see in thriller, or at least, you know, prominent sort of sidekick type character, is the whole idea of the family reject. And the family reject almost always stems from prejudice of some kind, be that about careers, or about racism, or homophobia, or misogyny, or something. And again, you cannot tell me that this isn't going to end up being in some way harmful. Or at least, you know, you're telling me that characters are what makes this unique. Okay, character-driven stories. We're going to delve deep into characters here. So we're going to delve into this whole family reject thing and expect nothing to happen that's going to upset anybody. Okay. And need I go on with this and tropes? Because there are so many. I mean, there are more tropes than would fit on this board if I wanted to, but I didn't want that to be fully about what this episode is, so we're gonna move on. And the one that really got me about this was characters are the only thing that makes thriller unique. And my immediate thought with this was, well, have you heard of different settings? You're telling me that setting has no impact on the story. That doesn't make things unique. If you set something halfway across the world, and it doesn't impact anything compared to impacting it where you live, you're bad. You don't actually know what you're doing in terms of writing a realistic setting at all. Because the culture will be completely different. If nothing else, culture will be different, weather will be different, and weather plays a huge part in darker literature, especially if you're talking about sort of classic thriller where you know there's a murder involved and the evidence in the murder and things are being covered up, and you're going to tell me weather doesn't play an impact? Weather doesn't have an impact in any of that? Are you joking? In terms of, you know, speed of blood drying, or rain, or temperature, snow, earthquakes, depending if you're on fault lines and shit. You're telling me none of that has the potential to make the story unique? That's just the weather. That's before we even get into culture. Character dynamics, how women are viewed, how women talk to men, for example, or how immigrants are treated, or even just, you know, nuances in terms of vocabulary used and turns of phrase. I mean, something that gets lost in translation a lot, this is something I see all the time, is when people make the comment of, "You look tired." Because in a lot of cultures that I've seen, this is a sort of flippant remark, and it's, you know, I would call it rude, personally, but I'm old-fashioned. But in the UK, it has a slightly different connotation to it. A lot of the time, this is someone asking, "Hey, are you okay?" And this isn't true everywhere. Again, if you're setting something, let's take London for an example. You're talking about, you know, Cockney rhyming slang. Okay, so the whole interaction with Cockney rhyming slang and everything else, that doesn't have the potential to make things unique? Okay. Do you know what unique means, my dude? Because I don't think you do. And now let's go on to this is something you see a lot of the time, that all you should do as a writer is string tropes together. You know, you can just focus on the characters and then it's fine. Okay. So you know what happens when you string tropes together, right? All you get is a cookie-cutter Marvel level of crap story. And you know what everybody is saying about Marvel at the moment, and why, you know, they are losing millions or millions of dollars with every film? Because all they're doing is stringing tropes together in cookie-cutter, template, save the cat style, beat sheet, bullshit things that everybody's seen 500 times. People are bored of those storylines, for starters. But a lot of it is, well, the characters just have no depth to them. They are stereotypes, and they make decisions that are at odds with what people are trying to do with making these characters unique because it must follow X trope. You see this all the time. And this is the thing, you can't have every set of enemies in every story ever end up becoming lovers, because that is a forced decision and it's not naturalistic. There will be ideological impasses that get in the way of these things sometimes, and I would argue most of the time. Most enemies to lovers storylines are very, very forced. Cookie cutter stories get, criticised because it is a lot of the time lost naturalism because you're trying to bring a unique character to it, but in order to follow it, they have to make decisions that just don't line up because the story says, the trope string says, you have to do this because otherwise if you make this other decision then that trope doesn't work. And besides all of this fairly surface level analysis here, you're losing the point of what a good book is. A good book has twists and turns that, generally speaking, you don't really have a proper twist if you see it coming. Maybe you get indications that, something's gonna, happen here, but can you really call it a full twist if you know exactly what the twist is going to be? I don't know that you can. And if you're stringing tropes together, it becomes cookie cutter, it becomes, just about anyone can see what's going to happen. Another point, great characters, really, I think I already touched on this. This involves natural decisions, naturalism, real decisions, real, three-dimensional characters, as opposed to plot says enemies to lovers, so I must compromise half my principles and become someone else for the second half of this. Actual real character development as opposed to Marvel levels of bullshit. And the other things with good books is they stay with you. They make you think. Even if it's not profound, okay, I'm questioning my spiritual beliefs and what that means and what I'd do if I found a shoe in the wall. Thank you, Benjamin Langley. I am scarred. Go read it, She Dead in Your Dreams. It's fantastic. But, and even just make you think about character dynamics and make you think, I don't know, let's talk about one that happened to me with age gaps. I had opinions on age gaps, and then, I ended up writing a couple of characters who ended up being together when I didn't expect them to, because that's the choice that they made. And the age gap was bigger than I was used to, but I thought, you know what? These two make it work. They are genuinely perfect for each other. Stay with me for a while made me think. This is the point. And staying with you doesn't have to mean... This doesn't have to be profound. It can just be there's a lasting impact of happiness, a lasting impact on, actually, I just really think about this one, not necessarily even big issue, differently. I think about this facet of life slightly differently. That's an impact of a good story. And particularly with thrillers, the point of a thriller, if you look at any thriller marketing, one of the I would say number one or number two that you see is, it's a thriller that keeps you guessing. You string tropes together and cookie cutter story, you ain't gonna be kept guessing. And the other point of thrillers, and it's called darker literature for a reason, we go into dark topics and we get real reactions from it. And if you're going to delve into dark topics, like murder and deep psychological issues that go alongside it, which is what good thrillers do, ultimately Harmless? Really? And attitudes like this, that novels, at the end of the day, are only tropes strung together, and you only need this tiny bit of unique character, and settings have no impact, and everything's harmless, and all of these attitudes. This is reflected in Trad Pub. It's reflected by agents who daren't take a risk. And this isn't just in publishing, this is in so many industries now, that we can only, play to crowd pleasers, we can only, make first-person shooters because they sell, or RPGs is, to a penny at this point. There are just so many of them, and they have to have this magic system and these roles, and films have to follow this plot, and it can only be in this genre, and this is why indie is the future. This is why indie and self-pub is rising and rising and rising. Indie films, indie games, indie books, the lot. This is why. Because nobody wants to keep experiencing the exact same thing that wasn't great quality in the first place, over and over and over and over. People actually want to experience good stories, good characters. People want to have things that are different. Because if you're going to spend $15 on a paperback, that better be a $15 well spent, is at least my view on this, and I'm sure a lot of you are the same. Actually, if I'm going to spend $15 on a paperback, it better be something good. I don't want a cookie-cutter horror that says, oh, zombie scary, you be scared of zombie because rotting flesh, yay. No, I want a horror that, is actually scary, brings something unique to the table, something I haven't experienced before. And this is only going to become, more apparent with inflation. Prices go up, people don't have a spare money in their pocket, so they want to experience new things, and you're not getting that from traditional places in the same way anymore. There are exceptions. There are some people who are still very, very good at this. But Trad Pub? No. Indie Pub is taking off because of it. This is why indie is the future. We actually give a crap about good characters, impact of settings and culture, and quality stories that aren't just tropes. Yes, tropes are going to be, present in just about everything, because you cannot write a lover story without that falling into a trope these days, and yes, that bugs the fuck out of me. Or, sometimes people want to include a particular trope or two, and again, that's great. But there's more to storytelling than stringing tropes. There's more to storytelling than paper-thin characters. Writing is an art. The point is that you bring unique qualities, you bring your own artistry, you bring your own voice. And this is where everything comes from. And you look at the classic pieces of literature, these were all things that were incredibly unique at the time. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. No one had written anything like that before. And people who have these really shitty attitudes about what literature should be are basically telling you not to do that. Not to be unique, never to bring something new to the table, never have the potential of actually making an impact. What's the point in that? Where's the life in that? Life is not about doing the same thing the same way as everybody else. There's no point in that. Where's the fun in that? Especially as a creative. There's nothing creative about that. Let's not do that. Let's be better than this. We know what we're talking about. So let's make something worth reading. Let's write music that's worth listening to. Let's watch TV shows and write them that are worth watching. Let's do things better than that. And the places you go to fulfill this, they're indie. That's where you go these days. This is before we even get into all of the ethical issues with TradPub. And this goes way beyond all the plagiarism, AI nonsense. This has been, massive issues for years, and it is something I've considered doing an episode on about why exactly I decided to go the indie route besides all of this. So if you'd like to see that, let me know in the comments or on my social media. The best place to do that, to stay updated on what is happening on the podcast at any given moment, that is Instagram. That is the home of the podcast. You get soundbite teaser reels, advance notice of what the episodes are, all of that sort of stuff, and more as I experiment with it. That is Jade_Black21 on Instagram. If you're looking for more about my writing and quality writing, with semi-live updates about characters, and real settings, and the passion that goes into proper true artistry with writing, Twitter's the place for that. I'm JadeBlack21 on there. And if you are a fellow writer who is published or on the way, please do get in touch. The way to do that is via email. That's jade42black@gmail.com. There is a list of things I want to know in the description in your initial contact. Please read through that. Please include those. A few things to note: if you're indie and self-pub, you are the people I want to hear from. This is where the quality literature is. There's no genre restriction, no age category restriction. Doesn't have to be new. Can be 20 years old if that's what you got. Doesn't have to be out yet either. Happy to do things for pre-order. And also, it doesn't have to be a novel. It can be poetry, short story collections, overview of a trilogy. Bring it on in. Let's see what we can work out. But that is about all I have for now. So until next time, you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a like. It helps the channel a lot. Intro and outro music by me. Copyright J Black 2024.